She stood in the middle of my driveway with a clipboard in one hand and a camera in the other. "That's 4 cars," she said, pointing at my brother's truck like she had just caught a criminal. "You're over the guest limit. You'll be getting another fine." Before I could answer, she took pictures of every license plate, smiled at me, and walked away. My family had only come over for my daughter's birthday dinner, and somehow that became a violation. 3 days later, I opened my mailbox and found a bright yellow envelope from the HOA. Inside was a notice saying I owed $20 because I had too many guests parked at my home. $20 wasn't the problem. It was the message behind it. They were acting like they owned my house. I read the letter twice, hoping I had missed something. But the words were clear. The new HOA board had created a guest parking management policy without asking anyone in the neighborhood. According to them, having more than 2 guest cars without permission could lead to fines every single day. I walked across the street to ask my neighbor if he had gotten the same letter. He laughed, then pulled 3 different HOA notices out of his mailbox. One was about leaving his garage open for 20 minutes. Another was because his trash can stayed outside until 7 in the evening instead of 6. The last one warned him that his grandson's basketball hoop was hurting community appearance. Looked at each other and realized this wasn't about keeping the neighborhood nice anymore. Someone was enjoying this power way too much. The face behind almost every complaint was the new HOA president, Linda. She had lived there for less than a year, but she walked around like she owned every house on the street. Every morning, people saw her driving slowly through the neighborhood, stopping to take pictures with her phone. If someone's lawn was a little too long, picture. A bike leaning near a garage, picture. A guest staying overnight, picture. She even knocked on doors just to count how many cars were parked outside. I tried to stay calm. My wife kept telling me, just pay the $20 and move on. But something didn't feel right. We had bought this house because we wanted our family to have a place where everyone could gather. My parents visited often. My brother came over every weekend. My daughter's friends were always running through the backyard. Now every visit felt like someone was watching from behind the curtains. The next weekend, my parents came over again. Before dinner was even ready, my phone buzzed. An email from the HOA. It included pictures taken less than 15 minutes earlier. 4 guest vehicles. Another $20 fine had already been added to my account. I looked out the window, and there was Linda, standing near the sidewalk with her phone pointed at my house. That's when I realized something that made my stomach turn. She wasn't waiting for people to break the rules. She was watching my house on purpose. I smiled, closed the blinds, and quietly said to my wife, if they want to treat my home like it belongs to them, maybe I'll make sure they don't get another dollar from me. Viral line. The day someone starts charging you for welcoming your own family, it stops feeling like home.
The next morning, I called the HOA office to ask one simple question. Can you show me where this guest rule was approved? The woman on the phone went quiet for a few seconds. Then she said, the board voted on it. I asked for the meeting minutes. Another pause. You'll need to submit a written request. I did exactly that. 2 days later, I got an email saying the documents were currently unavailable. That answer only made me more curious. Meanwhile, the fines kept coming. $20 here, $20 there. One notice claimed my guests stayed too long. Another said one car was parked too close to the sidewalk. Then they charged me because my brother parked in front of my own house instead of my driveway. Every letter felt more ridiculous than the last. Word spread through the neighborhood. People started stopping me during evening walks. An older veteran said he had been fined because his son visited after. Serving overseas. A young couple showed me pictures of a warning they received after hosting a family barbecue. Everyone had the same story. Linda always seemed to know exactly when guests arrived. Then one afternoon, my teenage daughter came inside looking upset. Dad, what happened? That HOA lady asked me who the people were at our house. I froze. What did she say? She smiled and asked if they were staying overnight. She said she needed to know because of community rules. My wife immediately stepped in. She questioned our daughter without us there. That crossed a line. I walked outside looking for Linda, but she was already driving away in her SUV. As she reached the corner, she slowed down just enough to wave at me, like she wanted me to know she wasn't afraid. That evening, I finally received a reply to my records request. Instead of the meeting minutes, they sent another invoice. This time, it included late fees because I refused to pay the earlier guest fines. I couldn't help laughing. They ignored my question, but somehow had time to send another bill. That's when I noticed something strange at the bottom of the page. The document listed the date the guest policy supposedly became active. I stared at it for several seconds. It was dated almost 2 months before Linda had even become HOA president. That made no sense. Either someone had changed the records, or the rule had never been approved the way they claimed. I quietly folded the paper, looked at my wife, and said, "Don't pay another cent. I think they're hiding something."
The next morning, I stopped by the HOA office in person. I wasn't angry. I just wanted answers. Linda was already there, talking to 2 board members. The moment she saw me, her smile disappeared. "I came to see the meeting records," I said. "They've already been explained," she replied. "No, they've been avoided." One of the board members looked uncomfortable. He started searching through a cabinet before Linda quickly stepped in. "Those files aren't available." I looked straight at him instead of her. "Are they unavailable? Or do they not exist?" Nobody answered. As I turned to leave, I noticed a stack of papers sitting on a nearby desk. The top page caught my eye for only a second, but it was enough. The date on that document was different from the date on my fine notice. 2 different dates. Same guest policy. Someone had changed something. I didn't say a word. I simply walked out. That afternoon, my neighbor called me. "You need to come over." When I got there, 5 homeowners were standing in his garage with folders full of HOA letters. We spread everything across a folding table. The pattern was impossible to miss. Some people were fined for 3 guest cars. Others were allowed 5 without any warning. One homeowner had visitors every weekend and never received a single notice. Then another neighbor pointed at one address. "That's Linda's best friend." We all looked closer. Not one violation, not one warning, nothing. Everyone else was getting watched, except the people close to her. The room went completely quiet. One of the older neighbors finally spoke. "This isn't enforcement, it's targeting." For the first time, people stopped feeling embarrassed about their own fines. Instead, they started comparing them. By the end of the evening, we had a pile of notices covering almost the entire table. Different families, different streets, same handwriting, same signature, same person. Before I went home, my neighbor handed me a small envelope. "I wasn't going to show anyone this," he said. Inside was a printed email someone had slipped into his mailbox anonymously. There was no name, no signature, just one sentence. "Check who really wrote the guest policy." It wasn't approved by the board. I read it twice, then a third time. If that message was true, everything Linda had been doing could fall apart. As soon as I got home, I stopped thinking about the $20 fines. This had become something much bigger. The next morning, several of us hired an attorney together. We handed over every violation letter, every email, every photo, and every document we had collected. A week later, the attorney smiled and said, "You were right to keep all of this." He discovered something the HOA never expected anyone to notice. The guest policy everyone had been punished under had never been approved during an official board meeting. The meeting minutes didn't contain it. There was no legal vote. The dates on the documents had been changed, and the policy had simply appeared in the neighborhood without following the HOA's own rules. Our attorney sent a formal demand letter to the HOA. The response came fast. They suddenly offered to review everyone's fines. We refused. We wanted the truth in front of every homeowner. At the next HOA meeting, the clubhouse was packed. People who had never attended before filled every seat. Linda walked in looking confident. But that confidence disappeared the moment our attorney began speaking. He projected the official records onto a screen. Then he showed the altered documents. Then he compared the dates. Then he pointed out that Linda's closest friends had never received the same violations everyone else did. The room exploded with questions. Board members looked at each other in complete shock. One of them quietly admitted he had never voted for any guest parking rule. Another said he had only signed paperwork after Linda told him everything had already been approved. Within minutes, the meeting was completely out of Linda's control. She tried blaming office staff. Then she blamed the previous board. Then she claimed everyone misunderstood the policy. Nobody believed her anymore. By the end of the night, the board voted to remove her as HOA president while an independent investigation was opened. Every guest fine issued under that fake policy was canceled, and homeowners who had already paid received refunds. A few weeks later, Linda quietly moved out of the neighborhood. Ironically, she put her own house up for sale before I ever had the chance to sell mine. My family stayed. The neighborhood slowly became the place we remembered. Kids played outside again. Neighbors visited each other without worrying about cameras or violation letters. Weekend barbecues came back, and nobody counted the cars in the driveway. One evening, my brother parked in front of my house again. I looked out the window. 4 guest cars. A full driveway. Family laughing in the backyard. No warning notices. No camera pointed at us. Just home. I smiled because I realized something important. The $20 was never the real issue. It was the price someone tried to put on our freedom to welcome the people we love. The strongest way to fight bad power isn't with anger. It's with the truth they hoped nobody would find.